Recording. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Coffee with Colleen, the EDC, Clallam County EDC Coffee Chat. And we're really pleased to have Terry Ward on with us today. He is the Vice President of Sound Publishing and the publisher of the Peninsula Daily News. Sound Publishing, I'll let Terry talk about that a little more in detail once we get going here, but they do own numerous newspapers to include the Forks Forum and the Sequim Gazette. And full disclosure, he is my vice chair on our board at the Clallam EDC, and very thankful that he volunteers to do that service and provide that perspective for businesses throughout Clallam County. So Terry, and so he'll give a brief talk and share some things about what's happening at the paper and his perspective, and then we'll open it up to questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please put your name or the question in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and we'll go ahead and call on you, and you can personally ask the question if you'd like. So Terry, thanks so much for joining us, and take it away.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Colleen. I appreciate the invite to share a little bit about what's happening with the newspapers on the Olympic Peninsula, as well as sound publishing overall. You know, I get asked a lot, how's the last year been for the Peninsula Daily News and sound publishing in general? You know, we are a reflection of the communities that we serve. And so naturally, when businesses are closed and restaurants aren't open and all the things that have happened throughout COVID, it has taken a strong effect on our newspaper and our ability to do some things that we were doing before. So, you know, as we reflect the local community, as you know, we saw businesses begin to lay off folks and begin to reduce people's work hours because of the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic. It really, we had to do the same thing. So we entered about a year ago, entered the month of April looking at laying off some of our staff. We furloughed some folks. We reduced hours on the remaining folks and tried to continue on with strong news coverage. We made a decision early on through the COVID-19 pandemic to provide our coronavirus coverage for free online. So all the stories that we were publishing all year long and continue to do today are outside of our normal paywall, meaning if you have a subscription to the newspaper, you can access it, or if you don't have a subscription to the newspaper, you can access it, because we wanted to make sure that the community in large had access to vital information that they needed on how to navigate through the pandemic, as the health department was making decisions, as Governor Jay Inslee was making decisions, and just to kind of keep themselves safe, understand where the community was going. And so we provided that as a service, and we continue to do that. I'm not sure how much longer we're going to do that as things begin to reopen, but it will at least probably be through, I would say, the end of June as we head into July, especially as we try to get to a point of making sure that people are vaccinated on the Olympic Peninsula before we do that, so that as things continue to open up. So like I said, it was a tough year for us, but we actually fared better than many of our peers in the industry and many of our peers in sound publishing. The community of Port Angeles, Sequim, Forks, they're really strong communities, and they're community minded. And we're very fortunate that they criticize us regularly, but they really embrace the newspaper by and large. We saw our print subscriptions stabilize. We did not see a lot of downturn and loss in our print subscribers. And then we saw a 60% growth in our digital subscriptions year to date. At one point that was trending at about a 98% growth throughout the pandemic, but it's kind of flatlined, and we're starting to cycle through a little bit of that now as we move forward. So we've actually seen overall our total number of subscribers in the last 12 months has grown versus a reduction, which is very different than what we see in our industry by large, because it's really taken a toll. Our advertising revenue, though, did not do as well this last year. when businesses can't be open, they can't advertise. So we decided early on in the summer last year to provide some grants to folks so that we could do some advertising match for the people who could advertise and to try to help get them back on their feet. And we awarded if I'm looking at my notes correctly, about $300,000 in grants for advertising back in August of 2020. And then we reopened the grants again in January of this year. And between January and March, we did another $197,000 in grants for small and medium-sized businesses on the peninsula to continue to advertise as their businesses were hit hard. It really helped us out. As part of our initiatives, we tend to do a lot with the community, a lot with festivals, a lot of our revenue is generated by festivals. You see the special sections in the newspaper and some of that, and a lot of that is strategic partnerships. We didn't do as many of those last year because naturally they didn't exist, right? So we decided what we would do is continue though our donations of ad space and in kind and donations of monetary donations to some of our nonprofits throughout the year. So many of our organizations that we've supported, we continue to do that even though our business was taking a little bit of a hit last year. So as the year went on, we were able to eventually bring back some of our furloughed staff. They were only gone for about 60 days. And then as we regrouped, we were able to bring back some of the folks that we furloughed. We had a minor reduction of, I think, about 3 folks on the peninsula that we didn't bring back at all this last year. And then we've kept several of them, though, still today at a lower reduced hours. Typically, most of our folks are working 32 to 36 hours a week right now as we're continuing to rebound from the effects that it had on our business. I talked about our digital subscriptions. Our digital ad revenue has been very strong. If you're not aware of what we do digitally, a lot of our advertising revenue digitally has nothing to do with our PDN website, Sequim Gazette website of the Forks Forum. It tends to be more geo-targeted and programmatic advertising. If you're sitting at home and you see that ad, you got on a business website, and then you have an ad following you around online, you're wondering, how do they know I looked at that? Well, those are the type of advertising that we provide for local businesses as well as some of our regional accounts also. So we've really embraced the digital side over the last couple of years, and that has really helped a lot of our businesses through COVID because they had to really pivot to offer more online offerings. And I know that Colleen, you were working on that a lot last year as well. And the EDC and other entities have placed some of that programmatic advertising with us throughout the last couple of years. And we've seen that go over pretty well from a business standpoint. It's kind of our best kept secret, right? We can target the individual right where they're at beyond on a geographic level, behavioral level, and we tell our businesses one by one about it. But we really need to do a better job of getting that message out to folks that there are a lot of really creative ways of reaching your consumer, and we need to do a better job of that. And so we're working towards that as we move forward. So as we saw the COVID pandemic start to hit last year, it was suggested to us that we reopen our Peninsula Home Fund. And we quickly relaunched the Peninsula Home Fund that we typically do between Thanksgiving and the first of the year. And we started it back up in April of last year and raised over $392,000 in COVID relief funds in our partnership with OLICAP. And then, which was more than we typically would raise during a normal home fund campaign. And then we turned around and we relaunched the normal home fund campaign in November of this last year, and we raised over another $300,000 in funds there as well. So, it was really close to about $700,000 in funds in a 12-month period that we were able to raise that goes back to the community to help with some of those essential needs. A lot of that went this past year to helping folks with their basic utilities, rent, things like that, as they were laid off and weren't working, and they were able to apply with OLICAP through the Peninsula Home Fund and get some relief there. So we tried to continue that type of effort as we move forward. So I think, overall, while COVID was difficult on us, I think we fared pretty well. Sound Publishing in general, we have, if you're not familiar with us as a company, beyond the Peninsula Daily News, the Forks Forum, and the Sequim Gazette, we also have 42 newspapers in Western Washington. We are the largest media company in Western Washington by reach. And then we have a handful of newspapers in Alaska as well that we picked up in 2018. But most of our Western Washington newspapers are doing really well. Most of them are weekly newspapers, and we have a handful of daily. The Peninsula Daily News is the second largest newspaper that we have, and the Everett Herald is the largest in Peninsula Daily News. My area of responsibility tends to focus on Western Washington, the western half of the Puget Sound, Whidbey Island, Kitsap, Jefferson, Clallam County, and then Grace Harbor County is where I spend a lot of my time in that region. The Peninsula Daily News, because it is the largest newspaper in my direct responsibility, consumes the majority of my time, and I spend most of my time working with issues there as well, as talking with staff, visiting with our ad director and our editor and folks like that on a regular basis. And then the rest of the time would be spent, on the phone and Zoom calls like this throughout my day as we've gone through COVID. So that's a brief update of where we're at. As a company, we suspended a lot of newspapers last year, including the Forks Forum. We were able to bring back the Forks Forum about 6 weeks after we suspended it. Historically, the PDN has subsidized our coverage in the Forks Forum by the tune of $60,000 a year of a loss that we have out there. But we were able to pivot. The community embraced it on the West End. They wanted to see their local newspaper survive. And so they really reached out to me en masse and started to call me on my cell phone. My cell phone number got put out there on the West End, and my phone was ringing last year. And a lot of the folks in Forks and the surrounding area, expressed their concern that they wanted their local newspapers. So historically, it was a free publication. We relaunched it as a paid weekly publication where people could subscribe for a year or two at a time and at a reasonable rate. And we've seen when we ended 2020, our fiscal year ends in February. And when we ended the year, we actually, for the first time I've been around the area, we actually ended the year having not lost any money on the Forks Forum because the community stepped in and made sure that newspaper was going to survive and move forward. So that's a success story that we like to tell, or I like to tell, because it's a testament to when a community gets behind their local newspaper, they can really make sure that the community not only survives, but begin to thrive. The newspaper will thrive. And study after study throughout the US has shown that a community that doesn't have a local newspaper tends to pay more in the long run, because nobody is reporting on the local government meetings in the in-depth that we do, and nobody is keeping folks accountable. Part of our job is to be a watchdog of the community. Part of our job is to make sure that we're reporting the things to the community that the community not only wants to know, but sometimes needs to know. And sometimes it's boring, right? Sometimes it's not the most attractive story to tell, but it's important for us to make sure that we're there. And there's been a lot of, I think NPR had a Hidden Brain podcast on the subject a couple of years ago, and I'd be happy to share that with Colleen, and she can pass it out as well. But it was talking about one community where the taxes begin to go up, and the cost of everything in the community began to rise once they lost their local media outlet in that community. The city council gave themselves, pay increases, and it began to really get out of hand within 3 or 4 years. Not saying, because we know that we have a lot of trustworthy elected officials on the Northern Olympic Peninsula, not saying that type of thing would necessarily happen, but what happens if the next person gets elected and there's nobody keeping an eye on them? There's not a radio station around. There's not a vibrant newspaper around. There's nobody, focusing on that kind of news. It can be very detrimental to the community at large. And so we take what we do seriously. We have some good news that we've recently, as we've invested back into our publications through all of this. If you read our newspaper online and you like looking at the print replica edition, about 2 months ago, we launched a new revised version of our print replica edition So that basically you're reading the newspaper just like you would if you're holding the print copy in your hand. We've found a better third-party vendor that we utilize that helps the presentation of that go better. And as part of that, we were able to, earlier this month, we launched a mobile app for the Peninsula Daily News. And right now that mobile app is available for download on the Apple App Store as well as Google Play. And you can download that and read it for free. Right now, we've kept the paywall down off of it for a little while as we're making sure the bugs are worked out and making sure that folks have an opportunity to sign up for the digital subscription. If you have a print subscription to our publication, you can access the website, the app, our mobile version, all of that for free as part of your print subscription. And then we also offer digital only subscriptions as well. So if you haven't had a chance to download our app, take a look at it. I'd be interested. Email me your feedback. Let me know what you think. We think it's pretty clean. On that app, you can read the print replica edition, or you can read the stories. You can share your stories just like you would on any type of a news app if you enjoy tweeting or sharing things on Facebook. And currently right now, it's all wide open. And so the biggest question I tend to get, and I think Colleen, you asked us before the meeting began, was, why, apps tend to be free. Why are we charging for the news in that capacity? And really because journalism takes resources to do. It costs money. We have to pay our journalists to continue to provide great coverage across the Northern Olympic Peninsula. And as we continue to do that, it's important that the community invests back into what we're doing. Advertising revenue helps offset that. If we didn't have the advertising revenue that we get, subscription rates would be unattainable for everybody because of just the sheer cost of what it takes to run a local newspaper. Newsprint is a big portion of our cost. Employee wages is a big portion of what we do, as well as all the many other services. And we feel it's important to continue to give back to the community any way we can through our staff volunteering places, from Rotary Club. I see one of our sales reps, Vivian Hansen, is on the call today. I know she's really involved in the morning Rotary on Fridays. Past Rotary president. A lot of our staff gets involved in the community because not only do they work and live in these communities, but they believe in the communities, and we believe in the community in large. So that's kind of my spiel. We've done a lot this year. It's been very difficult for us, but we feel like we've come through it stronger. I believe that the staff that we have is an amazing group of people, both at the PDN, Sequim, Gazette, Forks Forum, and they've pivoted well, much like many of your businesses have. They've been able to really think differently and come up with different ideas of how not only help us, but help other businesses and help the community navigate through things. Last year we published through COVID, we continued to publish a high share of stories, even though our news staff was operating on reduced hours and continue to do so. We had over 2,500 local pieces of content, bylined content that we produced last year from throughout COVID. And that's impressive when you think about it, because you think about the size of the staff that we have, the size of the newspaper that we publish, just the sheer fact that there's that many stories going on the Northern Olympic Peninsula. It's easy to report on the controversy surrounding, school boards, or the controversy surrounding the, city council, or whether or not somebody was carrying a gun at a protest. Those are the easy stories. The good stories are the ones that we really enjoy publishing. If there's somebody doing something good in the community, we want to make sure that we're covering that, as well as the things that everybody is gawking at in the community. If we can tell a story, and we are storytellers, if we can tell a story and paint the picture of what people are doing, I think we've served the community well. So, we have many ways for you to submit ideas to us for things that you want to cover. Sometimes it may take a while for us to get to it, but feel free to send those to Leah Leach or news@PeninsulaDailyNews.com, or Michael DeShiel at the Sequim Gazette, or myself. Feel free to email me any ideas that you have as well, because we want to make sure that we're covering things and we're providing updates to folks on things that you want to hear about. So with all that said, Colleen, I'll open it up to questions if anybody has any, and I appreciate the opportunity to kind of just give a brief update of everything that's going on.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Terry. I've got, I was hoping you could share a bit of the details that I don't think people really recognize what a big employer the Sound Publishing is in our county. And as I've been trying to create a large employers list of businesses that have over 10 or 20 employees, the for-profit business list is pretty small, surprisingly. And so can you, and you're in that really important list that's a taxpayer and generates revenues and jobs, et cetera. So can you characterize the workforce of Sound Publishing with your 3 papers in the county?
Yeah, we have about 53 employees, staff employees that we employ in Clallam County. And then beyond that, we have our independent contractors that deliver, your delivery drivers. If you want to get a print copy, somebody has to bring it to you. And so we have 40 some odd of those that are out there delivering. That fluctuates and it varies from time to time, because much like many of your businesses, as the pandemic, waged on and we began to see more and more stimulus packages begin to bolster the unemployment and things like that, we're finding that where folks would take part-time jobs for us or part-time newspaper carrier routes, adults delivering at night in their cars, we've found that they're not looking for those part-time positions much anymore. And so we're having a lot of some staff folks in our circulation department delivering out there. So we have 40 something carriers that are out there delivering on a regular basis. We also have, about 19 different freelancers or columnists that we have throughout our newspapers that continue to publish. And some of those, have a weekly column. Some of those are less frequent, whether it's a faith-based column or Andrew May's garden column or probably one of our, the 2 most popular columnists that we have tend to be Andrew May with his garden column and Pat Neal out on the West End, right, with the outdoors column. So, as we continue to do that, we're always looking for more of those type of writers as we can fit them in if they make sense. But that's kind of, we think we're a decent sized employer. We're not as large as maybe we were at one time, but a lot of the work that we do at the PDN there on 305 First is for some of our other sister newspapers. All the pages that go out in Kitsap for our 5 newspapers in Kitsap County are built and designed with our staff there in Port Angeles. We're kind of a hub. There are 2 hubs in Sound Publishing that we have that do work for other newspapers in our company. And that is up in Everett at the Everett Herald. We have a pagination and design hub there. And then we have one in Port Angeles also. The president of our company resides and he offices out of the Everett Herald, and because it's our largest daily. And then as vice president, my role is publisher of the PDN and the newspapers on the Olympic Peninsula. And I oversee that hub as well.
Great, thank you. The other thing I was hoping you could talk about is the community project program from the federal government, and you served on Congressman Kilmer's selection committee, I guess you'd refer to it as. Can you share a bit about that federal program in general and the outcome, or what the process was like, and what did, if anything, did Congressman Kilmer's did your committee determine coming out of that?
Well, I appreciate that. now I'm going to be very limited on what I can say. I've been kind of sworn to secrecy on some of this until Congressman Kilmer is ready to make an announcement on some things. The process, and that was I was a fill-in for you, Colleen. I served on that with the economic development professionals from Pierce County, Kitsap County, Mason, Jefferson, in Grace Harbor. And I stepped in my role as vice chair of the Clallam EDC. And the process was immensely time consuming. I think you owe me a beer or something at this point, Colleen.
I just want to share, I couldn't be there and participate in that because I thought that the port might be putting in an application. So I felt like I needed to recuse myself. As it turned out, the port didn't. But so I know Terry did a great job of representing our county in the EDC in that process.
Yeah, the process was pretty much, I think Congressman Kilmer's office was expecting about 40 projects across that region that I just described, and ended up with about 105, 109, somewhere around there, different projects that had to be read, scored, and discussed all within a week time period, which included Easter weekend in that time period as well. So we were all kind of up against the gun to try to get that done. It went very smooth. I thought that every county in that region had some good representation and some great projects. The idea was to make sure it had a broad-based regional representation on the final process. So what the community funding grants are, that project grants are, it's kind of the old earmarks that Congress used to include in the federal budget. And then they did away with those, and they're just bringing back that process right now. And so this is for the 2022 fiscal budget. So the projects we looked at they needed to be implemented in 2022. The budget money needed to be spent in 2022. It needed to be a project that served the community well. And I'm being a little vague on the process because I really can't get into how we discussed it, because I was a little bit of concern, especially I'm not only am I the chair of the vice chair of the EDC, I'm also I have newspapers in many of those markets, and as well as on the Northern Olympic Peninsula. And I think the concern by the participants was, what do you mean we have a media guy sitting on this committee? Can we trust that he'll have the right hat on, EDC, which we need to keep some things quiet, or will he go back and present this? And so much like many of the boards and things that I serve on, I recognize that there's always a little bit of sensitivity that takes place, especially the EDC, as we have our executive committee meetings and board meetings. There are things that we talk about and things that go on that never end up in the newspaper until it's found out another way, right? Whether it's announced or whether somebody else, shares something with my news staff, because I do have to represent the entities well, because that's my duty. And so we were able to have a good discussion about projects. I will tell you that I believe that they were reaching out to folks that kind of were finalists in that process to gather more information so that they could make their recommendations. They were going to talk to the Appropriations Committee about the House Appropriation Committee about whether or not these qualified for some of that as well. I can just tell you the ones from Clallam County are great projects. They were all great projects that were represented, and but the scoring rubric was pretty cut and dry, right? We had a process that we had to look at, the economic development side of things. We had a process we had to look at the impact on the community, all of those kind of things of whether, and then whether or not they had a solid plan. Was it a mature project? Was it something that was a pie in the sky wish that somebody put out there, or was it something that people wanted to, or they've already had interest in the community? Did they have broad community support? Did they have community support where folks put letters out, or their local media support it. All of those kind of things that many of you, or many of the folks that put those proposals together did very well. They reached out to, I know, Colleen, you did a fair number of letters of support. As I was reading through this, I could recognize a lot of the folks that were writing the letters of support, and because they were supporting several projects, because they were supporting their constituents through that. And all very well written, all very well put together, great projects, but unfortunately I can't share any more than that until Congressman Kilmer gives me the green light.
Sure. Totally understand that. And this is the first I've been hearing about it. So everyone knows that he hasn't shared any information. I didn't know what had happened there. And has he given any indication of a timeline of when those if they happen, what those selections are?
I was expecting, based on our conversation, that there would have been something maybe this week that some more information would have came out. I'm not sure where that stands. There's been no more communication with the advisory panel on that. And so as we, I was hoping that something would have been released prior to today, and then I could share a little bit more today, but I know there's a process that his staff, his team's going through on all of that. And so I imagine it's just when the process is done. So I would say soon, but it all depends on kind of where they're at. And, there were some very big projects in there that, part of the decision was also made of how much of a project to fund, the whole thing or partial, and so I think some of that decision-making is still going on at his office level.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you very much. So does anybody have any questions for Terry about the newspapers as businesses, or just his experience? And yes, Mike McAleer, go ahead.
Yeah, Terry, I volunteer with St. Vincent de Paul and work with a lot of people out there that have housing issues. I look at what you report on the Peninsula Home Fund, and it looks to me like a significant amount of the funding that is raised comes from Clallam County as opposed to Jefferson County. In other words, that your contributors are primarily from Clallam County, and yet the OLICAP that administers that fund does not have a lot of staff over here to deal with issues that we have, especially with the homeless and getting people into some kind of accommodation. Can you talk to me? Am I wrong about that balance or not?
I don't know the exact balance of contributions from county to county. I will tell you, as I see those come across, because, I get through that process, I tend to get pretty informed. I know that we published the list and kind of where it comes from. I could, though, follow up with OLICAP and get a percentage breakdown of what that looks like. And I'd be happy to kind of report back to see how accurate. My assumption would be similar to you. I would say the majority does come from Clallam, just because of the majority of our readership of the Peninsula Daily News is Clallam County based versus Jefferson County, just because of the population base, because of the strength that we have. We go all the way out to the West End. We have the Sequim Gazette, and we have the PDN. And then we also have a Jefferson County edition that we're in a competitive market over in Jefferson County, over in the Port Townsend, Port Hadlock, Port Ludlow, Quilcene area. So I could get more information there, but I would say that the OLICAP does have an office there. They were chosen as a partner years before I arrived on the peninsula, and main reason because they were best suited for administering those funds from a counseling standpoint. What they try to do is they assign a caseworker to each person that applies, and that doesn't matter what part of the peninsula they're from, Jefferson or Clallam County. And what they try to do is work with them to make sure that whatever the life circumstances that is going on that is causing them to need, non-pandemic funds, right? That's typically, because they tend to have the same folks that come back to OLECAP for help on a regular basis. So they try to work with them to help them get out of the situation that they're in. And the whole idea is the Peninsula Home Fund is not a handout, it's a hand up, right? To try to help folks rise themselves out of the level that they're in. This last year was a little bit different. We increased the amount per household that folks could apply for because we knew that the needs were extraordinary and moving there. So from the caseworker standpoint, they'll assign somebody to every person that applies, regardless of whether they're from Clallam or Jefferson County. The staff that they have in Clallam County works with this as well. And although their main office is in Jefferson County and their executive directors in Jefferson County, they do quite a bit of the work on the home fund also from their office across the street from my office in Clallam County.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens with us is that we get a call and it's somebody that's arrived in town or just been evicted, and frequently with minor children, and they need a place to sleep that night. And with OLECAP, you first have to have an appointment and get assigned somebody that's going to work with you. So you've got a window of 4 or 5 days, maybe even longer, before any action is taken. So, the Sequim Police Department has the authority to put somebody up with city funds for one night, maybe 2 nights. St. Vincent de Paul will frequently help for a few nights, but we're in the business, St. Vincent de Paul, of helping people get over the hump, the handout, not wanting to contribute to some kind of delinquency. So we need to be able to close that gap.
Mike, that is great feedback. Periodically throughout the year, I meet with the folks at OLECAP to get an update of how the funds have been used, talk about, what are we doing ongoing, what the next program, and we try to identify if there are any changes to the program that need to be made. One of the things I will do is in my next meeting here, and I'll try to have something probably in the next 30 days, I'll reach out to the executive director over there and see if we can talk about how do we provide quick, immediate assistance to folks through the home fund while we're going through that process. So especially if they're referred to OLECAP or to the home fund from another entity, we need to look at how can we help them quicker. So great feedback. I appreciate it. And I'd be happy to kind of report back, or I'm sure we'll publish a story on it as we move forward too, of any kind of changes that need to take place with the home fund.
Thank you.
Colleen,
Thanks.
can I hop in really quickly, please?
Absolutely. Yes.
Hi, Mike, this is Andrea from the Sequim Food Bank. I would love to visit with you more about this, and just this City of Sequim is helping fund the Sequim Health and Housing Collaborative. And we are moving, a lot of what we do is exactly the questions that you have. And so maybe you and I can chat later about that and how maybe we can wrap in with St. Vincent de Paul and help that. We have emergency funding right now for hotel stays. We also have emergency rental assistance that's available, and other options as well. So I think that would be something that would be a great conversation you and I could have.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah. So let's meet up sometime.
Okay.
Thanks, Colleen.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, we've got so many different nonprofits and really passionate people in the community that work on these kind of issues. And so I think this is I'm really happy that this was an opportunity for this conversation to occur, because, there's not necessary, there's the Healthy Families Coalition that I think does a really good job of trying to understand who's doing what so that these kind of conversations can occur. And also I know that historically, and this is something that, and I don't know if Commissioner Ozias is on still. I think I saw him join. Yeah, if Commissioner Ozias, if you want to say a few things about the funding streams of OLICAP and, kind of historically and what the county's view or vision is on this.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. In essence, I guess I would say that it is, and I serve on the board of OLICAP, and Mike, I was actually unaware of that sort of time gap. So I'll be interested to learn more about that as well. OLICAP has different operations. Some are the same in Jefferson and Clallam, and some are different. And there's a lot of effort that has gone into making sure that OLICAP's presence in Clallam County is as robust as it ought to be. And but there's a lot of history as to why that necessarily hasn't been the case. I think from the commissioner standpoint, what we're interested in doing, last week, I think, at our work session, we had an informational presentation by Serenity House to talk about their expansion and some of their challenges. It was immediately followed by a presentation from the Sequim Health and Housing Collaborative. And what the commissioners, what we talked about this week as follow-up is that we were really inspired by the model of the Sequim Health and Housing Collaborative, and would really like to think about what it might look like to pursue something like that on a more countywide level. And what I mean by being impressed is really seeing what it took for all of the nonprofit organizations who are out there on the ground doing this work to do the hard work of relationship building, to come up with a collaborative group that's actually functioning in a comprehensive and holistic manner. And the number of interventions and positive interventions that group has had in Sequim over the last year is really stunning. And what we see is all of these partners want to work together, and I think that the county has a real role to play right now in making sure that we take advantage of this time to be able to do that, and that's what we're looking to do. And so, we think that there's a really great opportunity to improve relationships between all of the service providers to make sure that we understand what each organization's role is, and that we're not just addressing one piece of the continuum. And just investing in Serenity House and making sure that shelter expansion happens is that's an important piece, but it's just one small piece. And so we're anxious to work with private funders, to work with other municipalities and governments as we better understand our guidance around how to use relief dollars, how do we inspire the business community, and how do we really think big. For example, we know that obviously housing and affordable housing is a complex and significant need. Is there overlap between how can we serve communities? For example, we know that there's a significant number of homeless women who are in their 60s and 70s and older who aren't a good fit for a shelter, and who aren't, it's not, putting them up in a hotel for a night or two on the way to maybe something unknown isn't really a good solution either. Are there opportunities to work potentially with builders and with schools to create some sort of a trades training program that might, build housing for, single women who need it. That's different from a shelter. That's different from maybe the needs that homeless vets have out in the West End. So I'm not sure how that's going to come together, but our goal is going to be to identify identify money that we have coming through the Relief Act. Look at our other sources of funding that we can bring to bear on homelessness and affordable housing, and look at additional revenue streams like the Opportunity Fund that might be able to be leveraged, and try and pull off something significant that actually moves the needle, not just in terms of overnight shelter for the homeless, but that actually inspires and facilitates the creation of additional housing and a more complete and well tied together spectrum of services. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's where the commissioner's heads are right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Ozias, and sorry to put you on the spot there.
It's no problem.
I know Rebecca Miller from Peninsula Behavioral Health had a comment or question. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Good morning, and as a partner agency of SHHC, the collaborative that they're talking about, it might even be an interesting topic someday, Colleen, as we're, hope to see kind of how we are functioning and how it would impact the business community. I just wanted to share, I had privately messaged Terry, and then I thought, oh, I'm just going to be bold and say it out loud. But if you're not aware, Peninsula Behavioral Health received a $3.7 million grant that was rolled out over 2 years. We received it last year. It runs out April 30th. And one of the things that we wrote into it is that we were going to be able to spend local money. And Terry, I wanted to let you know that I've got a $15,000 budget that's going to that I get to spend at PDN by April 30th, just to promote the work that the SAMHSA grant is allowing us to do. And it makes me really happy that the business community is terrific in supporting us. And when we can, we are absolutely thrilled. I'm really good at spending other people's money. So when we got this huge amount of money from the federal program, I'm really excited to be able to pass it along and keep it local right here in Clallam.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate that.
Well, and you've been incredible. I should have meant Terry is incredibly generous to PDH also, and we really appreciate their support of the agency and helping us do what we do. So thanks.
All right.
Colleen, can I add something that we're going to launch soon that I didn't mention? And one of the things that I'm getting pulled into, kind of kicking and screaming, not really, but is some of our staff has asked me to start almost like this, not a forum like this, but some one-on-one interviews with community leaders where we sit down, where I can sit down with them and have, we're calling it kind of a video podcast, like a vlog where I can sit down with, Commissioner Ozias or you from the EDC or the port and have some in-depth conversations about things that are going on to try and then, push that out on the PDN's website to kind of start to inform the community more about things that we can't necessarily do. You're limited on words in print, right? But a lot of times there are things going on in the community that get talked about on a topic like this, and dozens and dozens of people attend and some of that, but through our reach. And so I wanted to mention that because we're going to launch that in May. And I wanted to mention that it's an opportunity for many of the folks that I just scrolled through the names of the folks that are on this call this morning. And it might be that, I want to sit down with you for a little while and we try to break it down to a 15 or 20-minute video where we can kind of interview and dive in depth in some of the things that are going on in the different organizations, the nonprofits, the community members. I told the folks that are putting that together for me that they're going to have to book the people out because the most difficult thing, as is finding people to sit down and talk to. And so I would encourage if some of you, whether it's the PBH, or whether it's the food bank, or whether it's the EDC or the commissioners or whoever, Peninsula College, the journalism department, sitting down with Rich and talking about the future of journalism in Clallam County and the future of the Buccaneer and some of that kind of stuff going on. We'll be reaching out soon to try and book some of those, because we think it will help further that dialogue and that community awareness of some of these things that are going on that sometimes we only touch on because in the newspaper, in the print, because they're part of a meeting or something like that. So this will be something where it's not going to be fancy, but it's an opportunity to sit down and like this and have that type of conversation. So I would welcome anybody to be involved in that with me, because I think that's going to be important moving forward to try to help some of these projects and things that we've all witnessed.
Terry, can I just jump in here? I'm sorry. I want to say thank you for that. I'm glad that your staff has been pushing that, and we've got a real need right now to tell stories differently, just as you pointed out, and to tell different stories. And to find different ways to do it. And particularly when we live in a community where there are so many amazing people and so many stories that are inspirational and that are trust building and confidence building, and that remind us, about what we share in common rather than dividing us. And local journalism has a huge role to play. And I just want to say, again, thank you for that consideration. And if there's anything that I or the commissioners can do to help see that that's a robust and successful effort on your part, then we'd love to help and participate any way possible. That's really great news, Terry. Thank you.
Great feedback. Thank you. I appreciate your support.
I'd like to jump in on that thought. This is Kay. I'd also like to challenge us to speak to our younger adults and into the high school level, because I think they're getting a lot of skewed information. And if we can open their aperture of information that they get and respect them for where they are in life, I think that would be a really awesome target audience.
Yeah, and one of the things I think the last couple of years have shown us that it's not even just the younger folks that are getting skewed information. I like, I'm looking at the chat bar here on the call, and I think Rich put up help prevent truth decay, right? I think that's a big problem that we have right now is the internet has created a platform for everybody, which in theory is great. And it's really, really good, actually. But unfortunately, it's hard to verify the information that takes place. I know that that at the federal government level, they're looking at more intense ways of diving into that and what's happening. I know Senator Cantwell's office back in the fall released a state of local journalism report, and I'd be happy to share that. I think I shared it on a chamber call back in January that I spoke at. But it's really diving into what can be done, because there are so many inaccuracies that are being reported. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you're on, both sides are guilty of sharing information that's not factual, not accurate, not credible, and buying into things. And then because of the megaphone of social media, you're able to share that widely. The difference between what we do, and I had somebody after I spoke about this at another meeting I was at, said, yes, but journalists get it wrong sometimes too. Absolutely, we do. We get it wrong sometimes. But the difference is, if you point it out to us that we're wrong, we're going to go in and we're going to verify the information, and we're going to run a clarification or a correction and tell you that we got it wrong. But unfortunately, this stuff gets pushed out there, and it's not wrong because somebody made a mistake. Often it's wrong because they want it to be wrong, because they want to skew public opinion or change the view. I walked into the Olympic Peninsula, and I've been around here now for 5.5 years. You know, as John Brewer was retiring, I took over as the publisher of the Peninsula Daily News, and we worked together in September 2015. He departed in October, and then I was there. The big issue at that time was the big debate in Port Angeles of whether to keep fluoride in the water, right? It was a big controversial thing. And I think the beauty of the Olympic Peninsula is the community is such an activist community, and they're so engaged in every issue that comes up. Now it's shifted to Sequim. We see all the controversy going on in the Sequim city government, and whether some of it's right or some of it's wrong, folks are engaged. And I think our goal is to continue to produce a publication or a digital media platform, as well as our print, that helps get the truth and the information out to folks in a verified, factual basis. Will we get it wrong? Yep, because we're not perfect. We deal with thousands and thousands of words on a daily basis, and multiply that 6 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, we're going to make some mistakes. But ultimately, what we want to do is make sure that we're being credible in our approach. We're looking to the long term of the community, because it does us no good if we kill our credibility in a community, because then we don't have a viable business. We can't continue to do the things that we want to do, reporting Rebecca's organization and the food banks and the different things that we do throughout the community on a regular basis, and the home fund. If we lose that credibility, we have nothing. So I encourage everybody to continue to point out when we get it wrong, not if we publish something you disagree with because you think it's different than what your opinion should be. I get a share amount of those. I shared on a call back in January. I average about 450 emails a day that come into my inbox, and many of those are brutal. They are people that are very angry at something that we published, and it has nothing to do with the fact that we might have got it wrong. It's the fact that they disagree with that we published it at all because they're on the other side of the aisle, or whatever. And then the number of phone calls that I received, if I played some of the voicemails, we'd have to have the censor button going on right now to bleep out all the foul language that I receive on a regular basis. So it's not an easy job. You know, we've had threats against, against our building, threats against our lives. People call me up saying that, it'd be a shame if something happened to you at the time in the car that I was driving, describing the car, those kind of things that have happened in the past. We've had people trespassed from our offices where they can't go there. We've installed panic buttons, all of these kind of things because of the sheer threats against our staff. COVID and our front office being closed for us hasn't been, it's not good because we can't engage with the community on the same level, but we also don't have unhinged people walking in our door causing a scene in our lobby anymore either, because it's locked, right? So there's a trade-off there that's been actually good for my support staff in the front office. They haven't had to deal with nearly as much of that as they have in the past. So I know it's a long answer, but you're exactly right. I think that the next generation coming up needs to have a media literacy about them, of how to discern between fact and fiction. And I think, but it goes beyond, it goes to many of the adults in our community as well. And I think because people read headlines and they don't read stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Terry. I know Allison, I wanted to give her a moment, but I'll tell you, as a person that is an elected official, that at times things are controversial and people haven't agreed with my position. I am so happy that the article comments at the bottom that are typically, no, not typically, but oftentimes so filled with vitriol, and the commenters typically are commenting from a negative standpoint. I'm so glad that's gone, personally. Yeah, look at Jim McIntyre. And because there wasn't, people didn't have to say who they were, it just seemed like it fed this negative thing throughout our community that really, for people that want to volunteer and be elected officials, it was a huge disincentive generally to do that kind of work. So that's my personal opinion. But with that, I'll let Allison have the last word here, and then we'll call it a morning, I think. Go ahead, Allison.
No pressure. Terry, thank you so much for being here this morning. This is Allison Brecky from the city of Port Angeles. I want to first tell you that we were one of those families that became new print subscribers during COVID. And it's been really great to have that as like a family thing to do together. My first grader is reading the funnies. We call them the funnies here in our house. So it's a lot of fun. A good way to do some unique homeschooling. I want to also echo what Commissioner Oziah said about community conversations. I am a big supporter of just having them as often as possible. I think most of the people on this call know that I want to have honest conversations, and I'm willing to have them and to hear all the good and bad feedback. So I am volunteering my hand to be interviewed or videoed or whatever that looks like. I would love to maybe have the other community development directors. We could pull in, I mean, they're not on the call, so you can tell Rod and Mary Ellen and Barry, I'm recommending they come on with me, but I think it'd be just great to talk about the hot topic of housing and some other things that we're all dealing with.
Great. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, I know that Christy Smith from United Way has been working on getting people in the community to attend the housing forum on affordable housing. That's a national event. So if anybody's interested learning more about that, you can contact me or Christy. So yeah, Terry, thank you so much and please pass along to your team. You know, we of course don't always agree with them, and we get frustrated if one little detail's not quite right, but that's how things go. But all in all, I know the PDN and the Sequim Gazette and Forks Forum are really responsible reporters that want to get it right. And we really appreciate that we have that in our community. The tax generation that is created from your business is critically important, and all the employees, that's something that, is a vital element for our county's economy. So thank you very much for everything you do. And I hope the papers remain a really vital element of our community from a service and a revenue generation standpoint for decades and decades to come.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Enjoy your day.